Hello, everybody. My name's Michael Romero, and with me is
Emanuel Romero.
And we're college students, and today we have a Q&A of some of your questions that you have posted to us, and we're going to be answering some of those questions. If you have any questions that aren't in our Q&A, please drop them in the comments below, and please follow us as we ask some of those questions.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here.
Our first question, what's the difference between a Christian college and a normal college?
Well, they're really the same, and there's no difference. Nah, I'm playing. I'm just kidding.
Okay,
They're
so what's the
very
difference?
different, but I would say one of the differences is that our center is God,
Okay.
and their center is more just studies and knowing and knowledge. And I think that's where we differentiate. And what
Okay.
about you?
Okay. And I would absolutely, I would agree 100%. A normal college will focus more on the normal philosophies and culture of the world around you. A Christian college will focus on the theology of Christianity. That is the study of God, of the Christian God. That means you're going to be going to chapel and church. That means you're going to be studying the Bible.
Yeah, I would say too, yeah, we focus on the Bible and God, and other colleges don't at all.
Yeah.
And some colleges even forbid, study groups or Bible study groups like that, and we don't forbid that.
So you have your secular colleges that are going to study whatever secular philosophy. You have your Christian colleges, which are going to be focused on studying the Bible, but your Bible and Christ to what degree?
That's what you're looking for.
And then so our next question. So, can you, Emanuel,
Me?
can you go to, and can you, the watcher, you right there, behind the camera,
Yeah,
turn the
you
camera
right
around.
there.
Can you go to a Christian college if you don't want to work in a church afterward? And I'll repeat that. Can you go to a Christian college if you don't want to work in a church afterward?
I would say yes, of course. Like, it is open for anyone. It's not just for Christians or believers. It's for anybody who wants to study God more.
Yeah.
And I would just say that it preps you for life in general, and often in ways that normal colleges don't, and it prepares you like to be a better version of yourself in the future than in other colleges.
Yeah.
And I think that's what one of the differences is as well. And yeah, you don't definitely have to go into ministry or into the workforce of church, but this is a foundation, at least in my eyes, a foundation of what is to come for your life.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd even say study your college. Study the colleges you're looking at. What kind of courses do they offer? Ask the students that you're looking into the courses you're studying. And then above that, if you trust God with your life, ask him where you're supposed to go. Because if you're waffling back and forth, this college looks really good, this college looks very good, but God's calling you to this one specific college and you know it, that's the one, and you're not really sure why. Do you trust God enough to go there and to stay there? That's the one. Because then everything else is off the table. That's your calling. That's God's calling for you. I mean, in which case your profession is going to be what God puts on your table. And you're going to love it and you're going to hate it at some point because, I mean, that's what growth is. That's discipline. Disciplining you into your calling, but that's the one. Anyway, you got anything to add?
No, not at all. But the ultimate answer is you definitely don't have to work in a church if you want to come to a Christian college.
No, you don't.
Yeah, and that leads us to our third question. How can I be financially successful without pursuing wealth?
How can you be financially successful without pursuing wealth?
I know. Being homeless, asking for money.
But I mean, honestly, stewarding wealth properly, right? Learning how to steward the money God gives you properly. You know, as good Christian men and women, that means trusting God with our money. Well, how do we trust Him? We trust Him in small ways. We tithe. But ultimately, that means trusting Him with all of it. If all of it is a gift from God, it's all His money, He's just giving us a turn with it, then we trust Him implicitly. And if that means, okay, my bank account's about to drop to zero. And if I don't, and the enemy's going, well, if you don't do anything quick, that means leaving your school to go find a job and work for me. That means a heart check. Am I more afraid that I won't have money? Or am I more afraid of leaving God's calling for my life?
That's good.
And that means trusting God with your finances.
Yeah.
And not pursuing financial gain because God's going to bring it to you. It means asking people. And God tells us, I'm knocking on the door of your life. Will you answer? Don't give up. God gave Joshua. God gave Joshua Moses, and Moses instructed Joshua before he was gone to be encouraged. Was instructed. It was an encouragement. But then God told Joshua, commanded him to be encouraged. I mean, commanded him, be encouraged, right?
Right.
Be encouraged.
I'm encouraged.
Yeah, be encouraged. Be encouraged with your finances. You don't have to pursue it.
That resonates with me a lot of what you said, because there are a lot of times at this Christian college where I've joked around oh, I have $100 left. Oh, that's funny. It was and then there's that doubt in us that's
It's scary.
is the Lord gonna come through again? And I'm later on I end up repenting, because I'm how did I even doubt you, God? I was you've came through every time literally, and it's I shouldn't doubt you. I'm sorry. That was on me. That was my human side of me, you know.
Yeah, this last summer, there was a lot of stuff going on with my family, and I thought, okay, God, if you're calling me away and I'm done, I haven't graduated yet. I spent a lot of time in school, but that's okay. I don't need to graduate in order to be a servant of God. I don't have to graduate to be a good Christ-like servant. Then I'll go work. But I was working 70 hours a week, making barely enough to live on. And it was the same amount I was working at the school. And I was okay, I mean, that's doable. I can do it. God taught me how to do it. But, God then again called me. He went, do you trust me with your finances?
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have zero, and you're going to have to trust it's going to come from somewhere, period.
Yeah.
It's going to come. It's not your money.
From somewhere.
Yeah, it's not your money, period.
From God. Yeah, that's really scary for me, tithing at times.
He takes that spirit of fear that you give him, and he gives you back encouragement. And that's
beautiful.
If we can move on to the next question. Sorry, everybody. Let's move on. I'm sure you all are on the edge of your seat. All right. How do you bring up the topic of God with someone who doesn't believe? I want to know how you do this, because you're always out doing stuff. So how do you do that?
It's kind of I went to go get a haircut the other day, and I usually, what do you do on your free time? And then they answer this, that, play football, play soccer, this and that, go golfing. Oh, nice. And it's what else do you do? And they're oh, this and that. If they say sometimes, I go to church, I'm I go to church every once in a while. I'm oh, wow, how is that? Do you like church? They'll be oh, yes or no, and then just elaborate with them and be oh, well, sometimes I invite him straight away. At times I'm well, there's this place called New Hope Christian College and church, and it's feel free to come if you want. The people are awesome, the production is great, the church is awesome, the community is supreme.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes that's the way it goes. Other times it's how are you doing? You seem a little down right now. Are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? And it's like, well, I believe in God, and He takes my burdens, and I believe He could do the same for you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you feeling right now? It's like, would you like to give it to the Lord? And then it's like, do you believe in Christ? And then it can go somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
But people are usually open, at least when I've talked to them.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, oh, screw you, like, back away, back away. It's like, sometimes there's that spiritual side of it where you feel that is happening. It's like, you just have to intercede as well, you know? What about you? How do you bring up the topic?
I'll usually just ask somebody, same thing. It'll be a haircut, or it'll be just a question about what they're doing. I've met people reading books or something. I'll be, what are you reading? Oh, I'm reading this. Oh, okay, what's it about? I met this guy, he was reading this history book about, Black Indians. That was what it was titled, Black Indians, right? And it was about how Native Americans and Mexicans and the African slaves kind of intermingled in Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. And he was a Native American man, so he was kind of wanting to study more about history, and so we got to talking about his life, his journey, and he asked me about my life. And so I was able to share with him, well, I'm a student at New Hope. Oh, okay, what do you study? Well, I'm a pastoral student. And he's like, so like Christianity? Yeah, like I study Christianity, I study and believe in Jesus Christ. And he said, oh, okay. So what does that all mean to you? And so he began to ask me questions about the Bible, because this guy was more of a reader. He wanted to know and had just questions about life in general. And I was able to share with him, and he asked me questions like, well, what about this? Isn't history kind of up for anybody to interpret? Things like that. Well, I shared with him my faith. Well, I believe this is a trustworthy historical document. Right. And if you believe this is a trustworthy historical document, then it's logical to believe that Jesus Christ really did die for your sins. And then so we got on the topic of canonology. Like, well, what part of the Bible's canon if people just arbitrarily pull it out or not? And so we got to share that with him. How is our Bible canon? How does the knowledge of the Bible that we study in school fit into our faith? And it's not just arbitrary. It's not just something people are making up. It's something we're observing with our faith, And the same thing with like on a haircut. I met there used to be this great guy on a haircut I would always go see, and he was a gay gentleman. But he was phenomenal at his job, just phenomenal. But as soon as I mentioned that I was a pastoral student, his whole expression changed. He's like, "Oh God, another Christian,
Another judger."
Yeah, oh God, here we go. But
did I mess up his hair?
But I absolutely love talking with him because he would share his life with me.
Right.
He would share his life with me, how he got started, and I got to share my life with him and why I believed what I believed. Same thing. Yeah. And I like your approach because you got to the invite. I never got to go to the invite, and when I did, it was an awkward invite. Yeah. It was like, would you like to come to church? No, God, no. It's always, no way. I don't want to go to your church. It's too, like, you have your beliefs, bro. I got mine. It's like, oh, okay. Well, at least I got to invite, but it was super weird. Yeah. Like, but, same token, at least that was like, maybe that was just my job for the day.
Yeah, that's right.
Sharing knowledge, but.
Yeah. And oftentimes, too, just we don't have to bring the topic of God, but simply our actions of showing God through the love that He's given to us and loving on everybody else is, in my eyes, it's like, that's bringing up the topic, too. It's like us being nice to them and loving them. And, sometimes it's even through a tip. And it's like, oh, I don't want to tip this guy. He wasn't that good, And it's like,
man.
sometimes through that, I
Forget that
believe
guy.
that the Lord can speak. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, our actions really matter
Yeah.
when we're bringing up the topic of God. And it's like, because they're looking out for us, everything we're going to do.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, he's a Christian, he said. So let's really see if he is. It's
Yeah.
like, is he going to swear at me? I haven't heard him swear yet.
Yeah.
You know?
He's silently judging me behind his eyes. I can see it.
Yeah.
Everything I do. Judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
But
no.
that brings question number 5. How do you, Michael, correct a fellow believer?
Now, this depends. This depends on what's being brought to me. And I'll be completely honest. Like, it depends on how it's being brought to me. If there is someone that is blatantly attacking me, and it's wrong. It's completely wrong.
Right.
Like, just like, you're this, you're that, you're that.
Yeah.
In the past, I have responded, fight fire with fire. I've popped off, I've yelled. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't.
Our emotions at times get in the way a lot.
I've learned that that's something you just got to take. You got to put away, and you got to try and find the moment God gives you to come to that person at that peaceful level. You got to try and find the peace. And express to them, hey, you came to me this way, and that was wrong. You got to pray on it.
Right.
Hey, that was wrong. Like, and that's if someone's coming at you with anger, right? If there's something else, if you can do some judo, someone's yelling at you, right? Hey, you're
Judo.
doing this, I think you're doing this, or if they're just talking to you, you're doing this, I don't believe this way, and their thought process is wrong. I've found asking questions,
Yes.
trying to come alongside them
Leading
and
on
asking questions, leading on questions. Why do you think that way? Why do you think I would do that? Why do you think I would say that? Why?
Yeah. Why are you mad?
Why are you mad? There's this, I remember there's this thing, and I stopped using it, right? But, and I've refound it again. There's this thing in business tactics, which is interesting. It's called the 5 whys. The 5 whys. So if you can ask 5 whys, you'll get to the core problem, right? But it's true. If we come to people in relationship and we continue to ask them, what are they thinking? Why do they think that? It builds our relationship with them. It's not to attack them, it's to understand.
Right.
And that's important. Because
Understanding them.
Yeah, because not everybody has relationship where they can break down what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. And it might express itself in anger. It might express itself in hurt. And that's important. And it's because we're not always looking up to express ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I have found too is like speaking with a loving tone.
Yeah.
It's very important because especially us men,
Yeah.
we get angry when we hear yelling and like, you did this, Michael. You better give me my coffee back.
Yeah.
Spit it out. It's like, we don't like when people yell at us, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think other people don't like it either, but especially us. We don't react well to that. But I think a loving tone matters so much, and it shows once again, if we're showing God's love by not yelling or getting angry for no reason, But, sometimes I play soccer too, and sometimes I have a temper when I play soccer. Or when I see something wrong or somebody kicks me for no reason or,
Yeah.
I get really angry at times. But I think I've gotten better at it since I've been at this college, thank God. And just my relationship with God has gotten better.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, that was just immature that I used to fight back then over soccer. It's like we were just having fun, It's like, why did I get angry over that? Why did I box that guy? No, you know.
Kind of
Things
true.
that. It's
Like,
just stuff like that. And when it comes to a fellow believer, correcting a fellow believer, I'll ask myself, well, first, do I have enough relationship with this person to tell them straightforward? You know,
yeah,
like, okay, you're kind of in the wrong, bro, right here. Like, God says that we should do this, but, you know, we're doing this. It's like, do I have enough relationship with that person to tell them straight up? And other times I'll just tell people straight up, it's like, your tone is kind of not good right now. like, why are you mad? Like, did I do something? Is there something that we aren't good about? Is there some resentment going on? You know, and try to fix that. But when it comes to other things, I'll try to first, you know, like what Matthew says, it's like first go to the person, and then if they don't listen, bring another brother, so me and you will go and talk to them, and then, you know, take it to leadership. That's the third step. But it's all about one-on-one when it comes. It's like a one-on-one thing when it comes to correcting a fellow believer. And you don't want to do it in public in front of a whole congregation. You are a fornicator. Why are you doing that, you know? It's like, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't shame them. And that does bring shame and guilt. And a lot of people have felt that. And a lot of people have walked away from church because of that shame and guilt and resentment, you know? And we don't want to do that here. And that's ultimately not from God. Shaming, that's from Satan.
No, I agree. I think another is like, we can be too quick often. I think both as men and people in general, we can be too quick to want to bring the solution, right?
Oh, yes.
Like, we want to fix. We see the problem. Oh, this is the solution right there. This is your problem, and you're just talking to me. Oh, I know what your solution. I know what your solution is. It's like, wait, hold on. I'm not God.
Yeah. You can't speak for God.
And then the person just gets mad. They're angry, and it's like, well, hold on. You got to leave room for God's timing. You got to leave room for God's Holy Spirit to come upon that person. And again, you got to go by yourself and speak to that person. You got to bring a brother, and that means bringing a relationship, asking those questions like, hey, God, what's your will for this person? Which means asking the question, God, what's your will? Not oh, and God might go, I have a word. You got to speak to that person, or just ask them. You know, which means it's not your solution. It's not your will. It's
not at all.
It's God's. And next question. All right. Does being a Christian make me less masculine?
Absolutely. I'm a woman.
It makes me less masculine? You're a jerk. A huge tool. Let's fight it out.
Oh yeah, that's what we just learned and
All right.
talked about.
Yeah, but seriously, do you feel that being a Christian has made you less masculine?
No, if anything.
A less masculine male? I think it does. But how do you feel?
Seriously, wow. I have an opposing view then.
All right.
I don't think it makes me less masculine at all. I think people confuse that Christians just cry all the time, and I think in their eyes, that makes them less masculine.
Okay.
But in my eyes, it's like, no, like, you learn through men in the Bible how to, like, be a leader and be the man of the house like God has called us to be, you know. I just don't think that being a Christian makes you less masculine. I think if anything, it makes you the person that God called you to be and fortifies your identity in Christ.
Yeah, and to add on to that, no, absolutely not. Being a Christian does not make you less masculine. In Deuteronomy 22, it talks about men and women, it being a part of God's law that men and women should not wear, men should not wear women's clothing and women should not wear men's clothing. And then in Proverbs, it talks about not only men having wisdom, but women should also have wisdom. and men and women reflecting those things, and that's something that men should look for, and women should look for. And then in the New Testament, it talks about the structure of the household, and if, as Christian men and Christian women, if we observe the structure of the household through the Old Testament and what Christ has called us to be, and if our identity is children of God, and observing His Word and trusting His Word, then we would trust that those women that would be trusted to raise the children would, and likewise would be raising us, would raise us in God's wisdom, and that we would reflect Christ together, in which case the household would be just all pointed to Christ, in which case men would be those roles of encourager, likewise with women, right? But they would be separate. God created men as men, women as women, and they'd be separate but equally children under God. Yeah. And in which case, no, it shouldn't make you less masculine. It should just define your role as this is what God has created me to be, and it should just throw all those other things to the wayside. Whatever those other things are, I'm less masculine because of who? Who's it telling you you're less masculine? The world culture? Well, that's the world. That's not the Bible. That's not Jesus. So I would ask for more definition. If someone has further questions on this, please write that in the comments. Please ask so that can get further defined in the future. But you have anything to add?
No, I just feel like there's a big crisis right now having to do with masculinity and femininity, And I just feel like we have to get on track, and I feel like the Bible is the ultimate instructor for men and women, and what, like you said, like our roles in society,
Yeah.
And in a family too. Men have roles, women have roles, and together it all works out,
Oh yeah, and it's all broken. Like the world is broken. Like there's going to be men that are serving in what we'd observe as like a traditional feminine role, but God brings us all back together. Women that serve in a traditional male role, God brings us back together. Are we searching for Christ, right? Are we all searching to serve Christ? In which case, are we all seeking to serve each other in love likewise?
Yeah.
Which means serving. Are we seeking to serve in love?
Mm-hmm.
And that means changing. Are we willing to change? Not like in Romans 12, 1-2. Are we willing to sacrifice ourselves to God and not be conformed by what the world wants us to, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? Which means, okay, even though the world has conformed me to this box and has made me have to stay at home with my children, if God's going to transform me, am I going to be a minister to my kids as a father? As best as I can, as a father. I can't do things that a mother can do, but I can do things as a father can do.
That's
best
good,
I can, yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Next, what is faith, and why is it so vital?
So I had had to think about this one because I had my own answer. Thank God for Grant and Pastor Bernie. They had a similar answer to mine, but it was more concise. And for the sake of time, we want a more concise answer. So faith and fear are assurance in a reality that aren't yet here. So I'll say that again. Faith is assurance of a reality not yet here, and fear is the same.
Oh, that's
So
hardcore.
Yeah. Have the same faith in Jesus as you do in your chair. You don't question your chair or inspect your chair. You just sit with assurance.
Mm-hmm.
So faith is trusting in response to this challenge. The challenge that you're going to sit in your chair. The challenge that you're going to get in your car and get home safely. You don't think about it, but you trust in it.
Yeah.
Implicitly in it. And so faith is that assurance. You trust that people have studied space and the cosmos, and it's all out there. We're not in some shoebox that has holes poked in it, right? It's not a flat earth, it's a round earth. You trust it implicitly. So faith is trust in that. And when we experience fear, fear is also faith, but it's trusting in this thing that opposes God. And it's also trusting in this future. So there's faith in God, but there's also this opposing future. And it's assurance of that. It's an opposing will. But yeah, that is coming to you from Pastor Bernie Fetterman, who's in Southern California, and Grant Cavanis, who is also a graduate of New Hope Christian College. You have anything to add?
That's awesome. Well, I didn't go ask people like that, but I forgot where I read it, but it's like faith is things not yet seen. And I mean, we obviously can't physically see things all the time. Or for example, like God, we can't see him, but we feel him, and we trust in him and have faith in him that he is there, And just like you gave the example of the couch or the chair that we're sitting on, and you don't even think about it, and that also convicts me to a certain extent. It's like, wow, I put more faith sometimes in my car than in God sometimes, with my finances or my schooling or my health sometimes, or whatever it may be. My family especially is like my kryptonite. All the time. It's like family, family, family. Am I gonna put all my faith in God, not some of it, just a tiny bit of faith? Because then that's just doubting, Am I gonna put all my faith in God and trust him with my family while I'm here in college pursuing what he has for my life? And it doesn't go well when you doubt. At least when I've doubted, it's like it's so much anxiety and fear and sometimes depression for some. And it's just like it wears you down, literally, physically, mentally. It's like such a poison, stress. And it's like those are the outcomes of not having faith in God. And it's like, wow, the consequences are long lasting of not having faith in God. And it's just so much better to just completely have faith in God, blind faith in God. Quite literally, because we can't see him always, But it's just better that way for our health, for our mental side, for our little brains. Squishy little brains.
We can't see into the future, but
we can't at all.
We can trust that there is one.
And I have faith in God right now. And it was a convicting thing that you said that we often have more faith in other things, so it makes me rethink some things. Like, wow, I shouldn't trust my car more than God. It's like the fact that I don't even think about it is just like, And sometimes I do have to think about my faith in God, So that's interesting. Thank you, Michael.
So number 8, is the Christian God a tyrant? Does he control everything?
The first thing that comes to mind is the gift of free will. And while he does, allow everything to happen, ultimately he gives us the gift of free will, so we get to choose, which route we kind of make. It's like, will it be the good one or the right one? And most of the times we learn from the right one instead, and we choose the wrong one. So, which is sad. I've done that a lot myself. It's like, and there's something that like Pastor Wayne says. It's like, will you learn from wisdom or consequence? It's like those are the two teachers in life.
Wall hard, nose soft.
The school of what is it? Rock hard.
Wall hard, nose soft.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're gonna run into a wall, you learn that you can't do that.
And honestly, I sometimes have to run into a wall, or I have before a lot of times, and it's like, and then I'll keep running into the same wall again. It's like, okay, but I don't think that he, while he does, like, in a way, control everything, especially with our futures, it's like we ultimately get to choose.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, he gave us free will. And so why would he be a tyrant? Is it tyrannical for your parents not to want you to touch the stove? You can touch the stove when it's on, when it's off, but they don't want you to touch it, right? It's their stove. They've set up a rule for you. Is it tyrannical? Same thing. If they don't want you to stick a fork in an electrical output, is it tyrannical? They have rules. They have boundaries, right? And you can make it even more complex, right? They don't want you to drink before you're of age. You want to. So does your want triumph their desire, their boundary they've set before you? In which case, if it does, are you respecting them? By disrespecting them, by giving them the title of tyrant, right? It makes it easier to disrespect them because therefore, anything they do is wrong and you're right. So, if God's a tyrant, he's the wrong one. God's the deceiver. If God's the deceiver, if God's the evil one, then yeah. But he's given us free will. Then then he's still the evil one. He just doesn't want you to hurt yourself or others, God forbid. I agree with you. It's just if there's boundaries that we shouldn't pass because they might, God forbid, not just hurt us, but hurt everyone around us in ways we can't even comprehend, then yeah. Which brings us to the next question. Why does God let bad things happen to good people?
The first thing that comes to mind is like the story of Job. And my whole life, I always kind of looked at him as like his life was kind of unfortunate, but I was wrong about that until I fully read the whole story of Job. And it's like, it made me wonder too, why does God let bad things happen to good people? And, like a friend once told me, he was blameless, and the Bible does say that too. And just seeing all these bad things in our eyes, it's like, but in God's eyes, it's like, wow, this makes Job. It's like that his character and his person wouldn't be him, if it wasn't for what God allowed for Job to go through, And same thing with us. Sometimes bad things happen to you. I know you personally struggle with some health issues as well, and same with me, with like my knee and other things. And it's like, we're not that bad.
Yeah.
We're sinful, people, but it's like, I would say good people are even sinful people.
Yeah.
But, something that we should learn too is to love the person but not the sin. So just want to clear that up. But why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? And I look at my life and it's like, if it wasn't for God allowing some of those struggles, it's like I wouldn't be as close to the Lord as I am now. I wouldn't be in this Bible school. I wouldn't be having faith in God, with my family and everything. It's like, it just sounds fake to say that God doesn't allow things happen to good people, But what do you have to say about it?
Well, it makes me think of, so we read earlier this month, Exodus chapter 4, I believe, chapter 4 through 6. We were in Exodus.
Yeah.
And so God talks to Moses, right?
Right.
Calls Moses out of the wilderness. He tells him everything that he needs him to do, right? He needs him to, go talk to Pharaoh. But Moses, he goes, but God, I don't know how to talk.
Yeah.
God tells him, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I'm paraphrasing everybody, okay? So this isn't in the Bible. If you're like looking at what I said word for word, it's not in there, right? But I'm, again, paraphrasing, so it's going to be, the idea is there. So God tells him, don't worry about it, I'll teach you, right? And then Moses, again, goes, oh, God, I'm not sure. Can you send someone else? And then God gets mad. And then God cuts him off and goes, like your brother Aaron? Who I'm already sending, and who's going to be happy to see you. God already answered one of Moses' doubts. Mm-hmm. And then Moses allowed his doubt to become this fear that took him out of God's plan. And God honored it. Yeah. And then he even showed him, like, hey, I'm already sending Aaron to you, who could have potentially been, and this is my application from the observation, right? Could have potentially been this person that would have taught him. But then he made him his prophet, right? And then even further down the road, God tells Moses his plan even more so, that Moses is going to go and talk to Pharaoh, and he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. So Moses is going to go to Pharaoh, and he's going to fail. That's God's plan. You're going to go and fail. You're going to go and fail. The question is, are you going to be obedient? You were disobedient with me before when I told you, hey, this is what I want you to do, and then you took yourself out of my plan. Are you going to go and do what I'm telling you to do, and you're going to fail? You're going to be obedient. And then Moses goes and does it. And then God reveals to him, the reason you failed later in the chapters is for the salvation of others. God let all these bad things happen in Moses' past. Before he found God, he failed. He murdered somebody. God let these things happen to Moses. God gave him his failures for the salvation of other people. All of his failures are God's. All of his successes are God's for the salvation of other people. In all of my time at New Hope, I have failed. I have failed so much, and it was not to the point of, oh God, I murdered somebody like Paul.
I hope not.
I betrayed Jesus Christ like Peter. I might as well be a murderer. I almost flunked out of school and left my calling.
I'm glad you didn't.
But those failures, if God had told me, that was my plan actually, Michael. That was my plan, that you would fail, but it was for all of this, that you would not only save the people of Israel, but then other Egyptians might as well. And I'm making an inference. I am, so everybody don't chew my head off. I'm making an inference, but that other Egyptians might observe what Moses had said. Their hearts aren't hard like Pharaoh's. They'll observe what he said. They're acknowledging that God is God, and they'll paint the blood of the lamb on top of their door frames. And they'll see that God's God, and they'll escape. And then I'll make a law accepting the foreigners and tell Moses to tell the Israelites, accept the foreigners as they leave. And then I'll make the Israelites and all of the foreigners my plunder, because I desire relationship. I desire relationship over gold. And then I'll show that to everybody thousands of years later through Jesus Christ, who will do the exact same thing. Jesus Christ's life to people who don't know him is a failure, is a tragedy. It is bad things that happen to good people. I mean, that's what it is. To people who don't believe in him, it's the worst thing that could ever happen to a good person.
Yeah, and people often blame God too.
Yeah, I mean, and so why does a baby have to die? Why does a baby have to die? But when we look at it through God's eyes, that baby was the world's greatest gift. But it was God's greatest gift that we can share, that God gave us this thing. Why does a marriage have to die? Well, it was God's greatest opportunity that we could not only have this marriage and have this child, but that a whole other family might be saved and acknowledge that they might have relinquished that gift of marriage and love, Bad things, they're God's bad things, and they're God's plan. They're not the enemy going, God did this for no reason. the world's chaos. That's what the enemy's doing. God's going, actually, this is so that you can tell people about me in a new way, that these things aren't done. It's not over when I'm in it.
Yeah.
And that's why it only looks bad when it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's why.
Yeah, but the bigger outcome
Yeah.
is so much more deeper than we initially even thought with our little human eyes.
Yeah, and I mean,
we have to look at God's perspective, you
yeah.
know.
Ultimately, it all happens because the world's sinful and fallen, right? World's sinful, fallen. Well, how do we fix it? We accept Christ, right?
We accept Christ.
We accept Christ. You know, if Adam and Eve didn't lie to God, none of this would be happening. Well, okay, how do we go forward? Accept Christ, he's coming back, right? It's like,
He is coming back.
so I mean, but yeah, God's plan, it's happening. These things happened for a reason. Grandpa's gone for a reason. You know, he's with Christ.
Yeah.
You know, it's beautiful. It's wonderful.
It is. It is beautiful.
Anything more to add?
I would also have to say that, you know, like what the Bible says too, is like what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good.
Yeah.
I think this can tie into this question as well, you know. It's like, God is like, no, I'm going to allow this death to happen in your family, you know. And little do you know, you're going to start walking towards me later on, like maybe a month later or two, and it's like, you know, in our eyes, like, but he let that bad thing happen. But it's like, let's look at God's perspective, and it's like, oh wow, God is allowing this to happen so that the family can come closer to Christ. It's like, we don't look at that often.
Yeah, or like Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plan is not for your destruction, but for your welfare. Yeah, plans to give you a future and a hope. If that's true, if our God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, then, and we trust that implicitly, right? We have faith in that, like we said. Then that means those bad things, he planned that before we knew him.
Yep. All the bad things too.
And the bad things happening in the future after we know him. He planned that. Are we going to continue to be obedient? Or like Nathan, the prophet, right? Hey, tell King David this even if he chops your head off.
And he did.
Yeah.
And he didn't kill him from what I remember.
Yeah. Step into this furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Step into this furnace even if it kills you. For me. Didn't let them die. It was a freaking miracle. All right, anything else?
I think those are all the questions.
Okay. That looks like all the questions we have for today. If you have any more questions, or if there was any questions that we didn't ask, please feel free to comment below. And
if you guys have any questions about academics or time management, feel free to check out our last episode, Academic Excellence. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned on our New Hope podcast. Thank you guys for watching.
God bless.
Bye-bye.